Hello and welcome. My name is Hilda, and I'm a librarian here at the Los Angeles Public Library. Today's presentation is called Rights of Immigrant Business Owners, Protecting Yourself and Your Employees, and will be presented by Nadia Segura from BetZedek. This presentation will be recorded, so if you miss any part of it, you can catch the recording on the library's YouTube channel here. And there will be a Q&A session after the presentation, so if you have any questions, please write them in the chat and they will be answered at the end. And now I will hand it over to Nadia. Take it away, Nadia.
Thank you, Hilda, and thank you everyone for being here. We understand that the times that the community are living can be very overwhelming, and what we are hoping to do at BetSedec is to be able to provide small business owners with the tools so they prepare for any immigration encounters, and the most important that they follow the law and they understand the rights. So I wanted to start by saying that this is a safe space and that together we are stronger. As it was mentioned, there will be time for a Q&A at the end, but if you have specific questions regarding your business or the policies related to your business, please reach out to BetSedec. BetSedec is a legal aid nonprofit working in Los Angeles for over 50 years. We provide services regardless someone's race, religion, or immigration status. And the program I work for is the Small Business Development Program. And in that program, we provide free legal assistance to small business owners and entrepreneurs with questions related to their commercial leases, contracts, and we are helping a lot of businesses right now to draft the specific immigration policies that they need for their businesses to make sure that they are prepared for any encounters with immigration enforcement. The services that we provide are free. However, we will ask the individuals that is applying for certain information regarding their household income because the program in a specific focuses on supporting low to moderate income entrepreneurs and small business owners. You can apply for assistance by going through that link. I think Hilda is going to put it right now on the screen. And as I said, if you have specific questions about your business or any other areas in which you may need legal assistance, please reach out to us. And before we start, we wanted just to make sure that everyone understands that the presentation that is provided today is for educational purposes. As attorneys, we need to say this at the beginning of any presentation. We are not agreeing to be your attorneys. We are just providing this information for educational purposes. And if you need legal advice, please reach out to an attorney so they can advise you with everything related to your business. As I said, you can also reach out to us and we're happy to help you. Okay, so we are going to start with, I would say, the purpose of this presentation. I think one of the things that happened when the immigration authorities started visiting businesses was that nobody was prepared. Nobody knew what to do, what the rights were. And at the end, that created a lot of anxiety and put a lot of people at risk. So what we are trying to do is that through this presentation and the resources that we have available, we want to create a safe environment for the small business and the community around that small business. And that includes your employees or staff and any clients and anyone else that might be at your business when immigration encounters happen. All of this is important to be prepared. As I said, I think one of the things that happened at the beginning was that nobody was prepared and nobody knew what to do. But we hope that with today's presentation, you get information that will help you develop the specific policies that will help your small business. As I said, we are going to cover relevant information and rights for small business owners, their staff, and their customers. And that's the portion regarding to be prepared. We're also going to discuss data security practices because a lot of the questions that are coming up regarding immigration enforcement is the use of data and whether authorities can access that data. And that is bringing up also a lot of questions regarding what data small businesses are collecting from their staff, but also their customers. So we are going to talk about data security practices. We're also going to talk about I-9 compliance responsibilities. As a small business owner, if you have employees, you are required to comply with the I-9 form and with everything related to that one. So that is why it is important that we discuss this topic, and we are happy to answer any questions regarding the I-9 compliance form. And then we're also going to discuss what to do during an encounter, what are your rights, what to document, what steps are important that you and your employees follow to make sure that everyone is protected and that you understand your rights. Okay, so the first section is regarding data collection and storage best practices. I want to start by saying that a lot of small businesses might be using at this time computers and other systems to be able to handle data regarding their staff and their customers. However, we work with a lot of legacy businesses that are have been operating for many years, and they still collect data in paper. So something that we are discussing right now and that we think is relevant for small businesses is to consider whether it is time to develop the specific systems or get a software to be able to handle that data, because the issue with having paper documentation and everything in paper is that if that documentation is on top of your desk, or maybe you have it at a cabinet in an area that is considered public, and we're going to talk more about that, that data might not be protected. And this is not only related to immigration encounters, it's to everyone else that might be going to your business. How are you handling data is very important, because as a small business owner, you have a lot of responsibilities on making sure that you are keeping data that might be confidential in that state confidential. So it is important that, first of all, you ask yourself as a business owner, what type of data are you collecting and whether that data is relevant for your business. We work, for example, with plumbing services, plumbing companies, and they may have very detailed information about someone's address or any other information regarding the clients that they are visiting for their services. It is important that you ask whether you need to collect that information for the long term, or what process are you following to be able to discard that data, to make sure that people that shouldn't have access to that information, they don't get it. So maybe it is important that instead of collecting the full address, maybe you just collect the city and the zip code if you want to in the future access that information. So it is important that you are only collecting essential information. The other thing regarding employee data, it is what type of information you are collecting from your employees and how are you protecting that information. Later on, we're going to talk about the I-9 compliance and the requirements about that. So it is very important that you have employee files, that employee files are stored appropriately with the specific passwords or any other methods to make sure that that information remains confidential. And then the other thing that is important is that regarding collecting data related to employees, you will see that we are recommending everyone to collect an emergency contact for everyone that is in your staff. We know that sometimes small businesses ask this question at the beginning when they hire someone, but we have had cases where that emergency contact might not be relevant anymore. Like I had a business that was like, oh, well, that emergency contact for that employee actually was their ex-husband or ex-wife, so that information is not relevant anymore. So make sure that you're updating the data that is relevant. In this case, the recommendation is like an emergency contact, and that you are discarding and not collecting information that is not essential for your business. Through the program, we are very happy to help you to develop appropriate data policies, data protection policies to ensure that your business is complying with all the relevant information and the relevant laws regarding data storage. So the first thing to take away as businesses, as you are preparing in case there are interactions with immigration encounters, is to make sure that you are collecting data in the appropriate way, that you are only collecting essential information or essential data, and that you are updating that information often to make sure that it is still relevant for the business. Going to the next slide. And now we're going to talk about the I-9 form, which is, again, related to how you're storing data and how you're collecting information about your employees. So what is the I-9 form? The I-9 form is the employment eligibility verification form for employees. It is not necessary for independent contractors. But again, we have a specific presentation in which we discuss the differences between an employee and an independent contractor. So make sure that you understand that difference and that you are classifying your employees correctly. So this form applies to all employees and is only for people who are working in the US. The responsibilities around the I-9 form, I will say, are in two buckets. The first one is regarding the when do you have to collect this I-9 form. It usually has to be collected within 3 days of the first day of pay of that new employee. And you need to confirm that the documents that they are providing, maybe that work permit or any other type of documentation regarding the eligibility to be able to work in the US, appear to be genuine and related to that employee. So if from the beginning you know that the information that they are, or the documents that they are providing are not real, or the name that is stated there is a different name, that is from the beginning making that I-9 form and the process around it is not compliant. The other thing relevant to the I-9 form is since you need to complete it at the beginning of the employment, a lot of the times employers forget to verify whether that work permit is still valid. We had someone asking, like, I have employees that are on their DACA or the Dreamers Act, like the Dream Act, and they provided a work authorization from what they started, but I think it expired last year, and I hadn't requested a copy. As we are gonna see, there are processes in which authorities, the authorities provide request for audits to be able to verify that the information that you have around your employees is correct and is accurate. So it is your responsibility as a small business owner to make sure that that information and that those work permits are reviewed internally when they expire. So it is important that you are doing your internal audits before you actually receive a notice of an audit from immigration authorities. The other thing is that how long do you need to retain the I-9 forms from your employees? So if the employee worked less than 2 years, 3 years after the day of the first employment, and if they work more than 2 years, is 1 year after they stop working for you. So it is important that also, how do you store this information? As I was saying, it is important that you have separate files for each of your employees. But the information regarding the I-9 form, our recommendation is that it is on a separate folder, and that you have a folder regarding the I-9 verification form for each employee. You don't have them all together in one banner. Somebody said, oh, well, actually, all my I-9 forms are together. Well, if there's an audit, or they are asking you to review information regarding one of your employees, you don't want to have in the same folder or accessible for anyone to see the information regarding other employees. So the recommendation is that for everything related to the I-9 forms, you have separate files for each employee, and that they are separated from any other confidential information regarding that employee, which might include information regarding their health insurance, even their emergency contacts. That information should be together with the I-9 form. And then regarding the I-9 form and the audits around it, we're going to talk a little bit about the audit process. So an audit is basically an official review conducted by authorities to verify the employment eligibility from anyone in your team. They will send you a notice stating when is it going to be the audit. So if authorities go to your business, we are going to talk later on about the different warrants and the information that they need to provide. Whenever they are visiting your business, if they hadn't provided you with the appropriate notice for the audit regarding I-9 forms, it is not information that you are just going to give to them. There are steps that authorities needs to follow to be able to get access to that information. And that is, they will send you a notice about that audit. And then it's very important that you as an employer provide the required employee notice, letting your employees know that there's going to be an audit and when that audit is going to happen. It is important that during the audit, you select and notify the authorities of who is going to be the person communicating with them around the audit and taking the lead on that audit process. We recommend that no, you don't give access to other employees, that no one that is there can answer just general questions. You will have someone designated to lead that audit, and that's a person that authorities should communicate with. So think about right now, as you're like listening to this presentation, who's gonna be your point of contact, the point of contact of your business if there's a 9-9 audit. The other thing that is important regarding the audits is that if an unauthorized worker are identified, you have 10 days to provide a valid work authorization. So that's why on the last step of this table that you are seeing on the screen, we recommend to completing internal compliance reviews or internal audits to make sure that the information that you have is all valid and that is up to date. Because if they identified an unauthorized worker, you must either terminate that employment or place that employee on leave until they are able to provide the appropriate form. So instead of waiting until authorities come and they identify someone that might not be authorized to work because they don't have the appropriate documentation, it is your responsibility that you are going through those documents and making sure that everyone is compliant. In that way, you will protect them, but also you will protect your business. And then we are going to move ahead and talk about the different immigration enforcement agencies. As we are seeing right now, there are different agencies, including ICE, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland Security Investigations, and Cross-Border Patrol. And on the screen, you can see an idea of what they have to show you, the idea that they need to show to be able to make sure that they are part of that agency. Something that is important about that, we wanted to show the picture so you identify who they are. They should have something on their clothes saying that they are part of that agency. And if they don't have it, you need to ask them, what agency are they coming from? We are going to see once an encounter is happening, what are the steps to follow. But basically asking them to identify the agency that they are coming from so you are sure that the people that is in your business actually belong to one of the agencies. So through these slides of the fundamental rights during enforcement encounters, we are going to talk about the universal rights that every individual have, regardless of their immigration status. So the Constitution says that everyone has these rights. So it is important that everyone know them and they share them with their community. We're also going to talk about the enforcement protocols. What are the steps that you need to follow to document an encounter, and what are your obligations as an employer to be able to protect your employees? Okay, so the first thing is responding to immigration enforcement at your door. So what do you do once immigration authorities are outside your business? The first thing is to maintain calm and avoid sudden movements when the officials arrive. It is important that by then, and we're going to talk more about the immigration policy, you had already identified a person from your business that is going to be the authorized representative to talk with immigration authorities. So the first thing is that if you or one of your employees is there and then authorities arrive, that you already have an authorized representative that is going to talk with authorities about the reason of their visit. Then, as it says, inform officials that they cannot enter what are considered non-public areas or private areas, and we're going to talk in more depth about that in a minute. And then request the officials to remain only in the public spaces. And then the next step is to be able to verify the warrant that they need to present to be able to go to the private spaces. So what is that? What are the private and public spaces? I know that everyone has been hearing this. So what is the difference between that? So a private space is a space that only personnel, the owner of that business, or specific people have access to. And the recommendation is that to be able to identify a private area, you should put a sign that establishes that area is private. But the most important is that you take steps to make sure that that area remains private. I had question coming up like, oh, well, we have the kitchen and the kitchen is actually private because our customers cannot go to the kitchen. We have the sign, but The reality is that we always leave the door open, so whenever we are cooking, there is no smoke inside the kitchen, so that door is actually always open. Having that door open, even though you had identified the space as a private space, in some way is breaking that rule. Like you are saying, well, it is private, but because I'm leaving it open, anyone can actually come in. So if there are areas in your business that you want to identify as private, make sure that you are actually following steps to maintain them as private, because if not, that privacy will be broken and actually will become a public area. What is a public area, for example, in a restaurant? The public area will be the area where any customer has access to. It can be the area where people is eating, it could be the bathroom. The areas that are public are the areas where anyone has access to. So in your business, start identifying what are those private areas. And as I said, take the appropriate steps to maintain them as private. Something important also about private and public areas is that any documentation that you have on your desk or in a public area available for anyone to take, that information is considered public. So as I was saying, if you have, for example, someone in your business that is the accountant verifying anything related to your employees, if they use paper documentation and it is available on the desk, that information might consider public. So make sure that you are taking the specific steps to ensure that once the first thing is that you are separating the public and the private areas, but then also, again, we go back to storing data, that you are storing any information that should be private and that is not easily accessible at that public area. The other question that we also receive regarding private and public areas is, well, what if, for example, you guys, like we are a nonprofit and we have the lobby of our organization and then we have offices on the back. To be able to access to those offices, people need to have an appointment with us to be able to get there. So if you are saying that that area is private because only people with an appointment can come in, you need to make sure that you are taking steps again to verify who is coming in. So if you are saying that people need to have an appointment, you need to ask them for their name and make sure that you have a way to verify that that person had an appointment at whatever time and that's why you are letting them in. This will apply, for example, for massage rooms or like nail salons if you have specific areas that you want to maintain as private. So think about all of these and how it will apply to the type of business that you have. The next step that we talk about is the importance of verifying a warrant. So we wanted to talk about the different warrants that are available and the purposes of each of them. So the first one is the arrest warrant, which authorizes authorities to arrest a specific individual. They don't grant authorization to search specific private areas. So for the arrest warrants, what we are recommending to everyone is to make sure that you verify the name of the individual that is listed on that arrest warrant. We have seen cases in which authorities come in with someone that has a similar name but might not be the same person. So make sure that you are reviewing the warrant, and I'm going to put a picture on the next slide to make sure that the name that is there is actually the name from the individual that they are either questioning or that they are taking with them. So that's the first step for arrest warrants. The next type of warrants are the search warrants, which must be signed by a judge to be valid for entering in the private areas. And the importance with the search warrants is also that they specify locations that can be searched and items that might be seized. So if you have authorities in your business and they arrive with a search warrant, the first thing is that since it is signed by a judge, you cannot avoid them for them to enter your space. I received that question recently, whether if I don't want them to come in. It is the right of the authorities to be able to come in because they have the appropriate documentation. It is your responsibility to ensure that the address that is listed there, that the business that is listed in the warrant is actually your business. We have seen occasions too in which they go to a very similar address, but it's not that address. It might be the business next to yours. And you don't review the address that is listed there. and then they start searching your place. So it is important that you review, first of all, that they are signed by a judge, but then that the location that is listed there is actually the location of your business. The last type of warrants are the administrative warrants, which are signed by immigration officials. The difference with these ones is that they are not signed by a judge. So they don't authorize entry into private spaces. They only are authorized to be able to go to the public areas that they are like basically visiting. So it is important that you learn to differentiate between the administrative warrants and the judicial warrants. So again, this is a judicial warrant. You can see that on the top it says district court, and on the bottom it says that is signed by a judge. It authorizes the arrest, seizure, or search of someone, and it must be executed within 14 days of the day that they are visiting your business, and must be complied if it's valid. So make sure that you are verifying the date that is signed by a judge and the court that is actually issuing the order. The next type of warrant, as we said, was the administrative warrants. You can see that on the top it says U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So that means that that warrant is actually signed by an immigration officer, and it doesn't authorize the search of non-public areas. So if they come with this type of warrant, since it is not signed by a judge, you can refuse the entry to the private areas. They should remain only on the public areas because it is not a judicial warrant. And then once authorities are there, we're going to talk about the necessary steps that you should follow for documentation. But first, we wanted to start with the key phrases that anyone, no matter their immigration status, should learn and have in mind. So the first one is the right to remain silent. You don't have to answer any questions. Silence is your right. Request the official identification. As I said, you can always ask the officials or the agents to provide an ID and to tell you their name and the agency that they are coming from. That is your right. To deny entry without the warrant, we already discussed the warrants and the types of warrants that exist. So if they don't have the appropriate warrant, they shouldn't be able to access any private spaces. Documenting the encounter, it is your right, but we are going to talk about the importance of documenting, but to do it in an appropriate way to make sure that the situation doesn't escalate. And then you can always consult an attorney. You can always request to speak with your attorney before answering any questions. So here are the phrases. It is important that everyone remembers them and remembers that they can always say them. It is important that you share them with your employees and your customers. We are seeing clients that are actually printing these specific phrases and they are putting them around their businesses to make sure that not only their employees know them, but also their customers. We've seen situations in which authorities are taking both employees and customers. So it is important that we share these phrases with our community and that everyone knows that it is your right to be able to say any of these phrases. So yeah, those are the ones that are in the screen. And then what to document during enforcement encounters. So we had already discussed that it's important that you as the business owner name someone as the authorized representative to be talking with the authorities. So that's already one person that you need to name or like select from your staff, the person that will be talking with the authorities. Our recommendation is that you select two other people, one of them that is gonna document everything in writing, and the recommendation is that is in a paper. So there is no issues on why do you have your phone now, what are you doing with your phone. It is better if you have someone that is documenting in writing. And I'm gonna show you what type of information they should document and an example of a page that you can print and have ready and available for that person to document. It is also important that before you start documenting, you tell the authorities, per our immigration policy or our policy, it is my duty to be able to document the encounter, so that's what I'm doing. And then we recommend also to have someone else that is recording the encounter. And I think something important to remember, and I have talked about this a couple of times now, is that if you select someone to document and to have the phone out and record, that will be the only person recording. We have seen situations escalate when authorities arrive and then everyone takes their phones out and it creates a little bit more of chaos, anxiety, and it can escalate the situation. So our recommendation is that that person that is recording states, I am the designated person to document the encounter, and my duty or my obligation is to record. So that's what I'm doing with my phone. And then you have just that person recording everything with their phone. So now we have already talked about 3 different people that you should have in your business to be prepared in case an encounter happens. So once the encounter is happening, what is the key information that they should document? The time, the date, and the location of the encounter, and then the names and badge numbers of all officials present. You can also include the number of officials that are there, the purpose of the visit, and then capture any warrants or legal documents that they presented. So you can be able to check whether that warrant is valid, and where that warrant allows them to get into private spaces. Record any observations, anything unusual, any actions taken by officials that you don't think should be happening. Because a lot of people ask us, like, sometimes you're telling all of this, but we are seeing authorities doing something different. The best way and the tool that you have is to document that, to be able to present that case in the future. I know it can be scary, it can be frustrating to see that authorities are not following what the law says. However, your best resource and the best tool that you have is to document what is happening. And then the last step here is to compile and review all the records that you have. If you have the records from the person that recorded, the person that was writing, all of that should come together, and you should consult with an attorney to make sure that anything that happened not according to the law is evidence that can be used in the future for a case if something didn't go as it should have gone. Okay, so the next section is regarding post-encounter protocols. We talked at the beginning about the importance of having the emergency contact for everyone in your business, no matter their immigration status. So it is important that you support those affected individuals, provide counseling services if necessary, and then also that you make sure to notify the families if someone was taken to an immigration detention center or something like that. And that's why you need that emergency contact, to make sure that you are able to contact anyone from that family that was affected by that encounter. We're also recommending to do an organizational debriefing, meaning you talk with your staff about the things that happened, the steps that were followed, and things that could be improved in the future. Maybe the person that you had designated as the authorized representative to talk with the authorities wasn't there when the encounter happened. It might be important to name someone else, like to have more than one person, because what if that person that was there actually went to a restaurant at the time or something like that, or was sick and it wasn't in the business. So it's always important that you have more than one person, but that organizational debriefing after the encounter helps you to conduct a review of the incident and to assess any response, outcomes, and what are you going to do in the future. The last part is to consider any employment considerations. Consider giving temporary leave options for affected employees. And the most important is to ensure compliance with all laws and protecting the rights of your employees. Okay. And then we are going to go to the next one, which is about the grading immigration or grading policy. We have been talking a lot about why it's important to have this type of policy. And the first thing is that it reduces anxiety among staff, and it also protects all your legal rights and the rights of your organization and your employees. So it helps you to be prepared. What are the key elements that policy should have? Define the facilities and the locations covered by the policy, establishing what areas are considered public and private, establishing guidelines for the data collection limitations, and what are the protocols to store data. And then it also should include specific staff responses during the encounter. Who are the representatives? Who are that will talk with authorities? Who is gonna be documenting? What are the steps that need to be followed? The most important part about the policy is that it's great. You can have it. You did all the work to make sure that you have a policy, but you didn't share it with your staff. So no one will actually be prepared. So I think the most important part of the policy is the implementation steps. How are you going to make sure that you train your staff on the policy? And then the most important is where are you going to have it available? Everyone should have access to it, should understand what are the steps to be able to, that they need to follow in case there is an encounter. But also, if you have a policy ready in case authorities come, you can say, hey, I am not the authorized representative to speak with you. Please give me a minute and I'm going to call the supervisor. They are the representative according to this policy. So everyone should know what that policy is and the content of the policy. And then, as I had mentioned, through the program, we are happy to be able to help small businesses drafting that policy. And as I said, it provides a unified direction among staff and the owners of those businesses to understand how to respond to authorities. It establishes a framework. It is a reference point for the staff when this type of enforcement action occurs. And it's also basically a plan to have when an emergency happens. We've been working very closely with businesses affected by the fires, for example, and some of them didn't have an emergency plan in case there was a fire. So this is something similar. It is also an emergency, and having a policy in place helps you to be prepared to avoid future damage and to be able to make sure that everyone is protected. As I said, it will also help to reduce anxiety among personnel and also the owners. And then here are examples of the template policies. As you can see, we are including the primary representative, the secondary representative. We recommend to have more than one person. It identifies the purpose and scope of the policy, and then the specific steps that staff are going to follow. So please review this. I'm going to go ahead and also show you the guide that we have prepared for small businesses so everyone can see what the policy is about. And then we also wanted to show a picture of the notice of private space to make sure that you have the appropriate signs in your business. First of all, identify what areas do you want to continue having as private and which ones are public, and put the appropriate signs in those areas. And then this is the guide that we have available. They are also going to put the link here. You can just scan the QR code to be able to get access to the guide. And it has all this information. This is the guide. And as I was showing you, it includes all the information that we've been talking about today. It also includes the policy templates that I was showing you. Here is in this template, you can see what to be able to document. This is the documentation form. And then it has the date of the encounter, location, the staff completing the form, the number of officials present, like all the information that your staff should be able to document when an enforcement is happening. You can print this out and have it available in your business for your staff to be able to take. Then also this is the steps for the authorized representative, what they need to do, what are the steps that they need to follow when their authorities arrive, when they leave, to be able to have a plan. That's the most important. And this is the training guide. As we can see, as I said, the most important part about the policy is to be able to share it with your team. So we are also including a few steps that we think are relevant for your business as they are working to make sure that they have the policy in place, but also that they know what to do. And that's it. I'm going to go back to the slide with the QR code so people can get access to the guide here. And then I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't see any questions on the chat right now, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Gil, I think you had a couple of questions that you've been hearing. Yes. So how can I identify if a warrant is valid? I already showed you a couple of slides. Yes, this one, where it has the different warrants. As we said, the legal, the judicial warrant, which is the warrant to be able to get into private spaces, need to be signed by a judge. It needs to have, it needs to be executed within 14 days. And you should verify that the address that is there is actually the address for your business.
Okay. Okay, so the next question, I'm so sorry, what does the immigration policy look like?
Okay, and that's the one I was showing you. So as I said, I think the most important part of the policy is to make sure that you have more than one representative, because things happen, and if you don't have the appropriate representatives there, it could be difficult because you have a plan, but then the person is not there to execute it. So that's why we are recommending to have more than one representative. And as you can see, it's very simple. It's just a few pages, and you already have the template. If you reach out to us, we can make sure that we tailor it to your business.
Got it. And the last question is, how can I differentiate between a private and a public space in my business?
Yes, so we talk a lot about the private and public spaces, but basically, a public space is a space where anyone has access to it. As I said, in a restaurant, for example, the areas where people are eating, and then the private space will be areas that are restricted just for personnel or certain staff. The most important is to make sure that you are following steps to maintain them as private, because if you leave, for example, that door open and you're actually not enforcing that space is private, anyone will have access to it.
Got it. So there has to question, does there have to be a door for it to be a private space, excuse me?
It There needs to be something that establishes that that space is private. So, for example, later this week, we are having a presentation with car wash businesses. And you know how there's like this tunnel where cars go into, but it's actually usually open. What we are recommending is to have a sign or maybe like a little chain that establishes that that space is private. What you want to make sure is that there's something that is establishing that that space is private and that no everyone is having access to it.
Got it. And we do have one question from the audience. What should we do if we have verified that the warrant is not accurate, but they refuse to leave?
Yes, so I think the first thing is to make sure that you have your authorized representative sharing with the agents that you have verified the warrant and that the warrant is not correct, is not accurate. Maybe the address is wrong, maybe it's not a judicial warrant, and they shouldn't be able to get access to the private spaces. If they refuse to leave, the recommendation is that you document what is happening. Who are you talking with? Like, what official are you talking about it? What time the counter happened? As I said, it is difficult when the agents are not following what is the law. So the best tool that you have is to document the encounter to be able to take steps in the future. Again, not escalating the situation, making sure that you stay calm and that you are actually sharing the information. And if you have a policy, documenting everything to make sure that you can do something in the future.
Got it. Great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to give you just another second just to make sure that there's no more questions. I know this is a very important presentation. Okay, so I don't see any more questions, but thank you so much, Nadia, for this presentation. It's very informative. And for everybody who's watching, I know that we only had a limited amount of time and the slides go kind of fast, but this recording will be up on the YouTube channel, so go ahead and check it out. You can pause as needed and take the links, look at everything closely. And also, we did do this presentation, Nadia did this presentation last week in Spanish, so the recording is already up. And if you know anybody that needs this information in Spanish, please do share it with them as well. And
new question on how do they register for that other
I have
yeah,
no
so
idea.
I'm gonna put it on the chat. How do I do it?
Okay, you can put it in the private chat, Nadia, and then I can put it on the regular chat.
Okay, yeah, so that is the link to be able to register for that other event.
Okay, so I will put that in the comments for everybody else. Okay, link is in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you all. Thank you, Nadia,
Thank you.
again. And thank you all for
Hilda.
coming.
Have a good rest of your day.
Have an amazing
Bye.
day, everybody.